I'm Mark Stouffer-Hunter with the Carl Mary Kaler History Center. Today is Thursday, November 15th, 2012. And with me today are
Jack Haney, longtime Cedar Rapids resident,
okay.
Born and raised here.
Mm-hmm.
Jim Wasta, born and raised here.
Dick Hansen, born and raised here.
Lubin, 45, 1945 on.
Okay.
Didn't get her name.
Oh, try again. Here you go.
That's who I was looking at.
Now you can hold this if you want. It's up to you, or I can hold it for you.
Oh, Nita Lubin, and I came here in Cedar Rapids in 45.
Okay.
From Marston.
Alan, could you hear that okay? Okay. Okay, well, we're going to talk about our memories, what we remember about Cedar Rapids and Linn County in particular is what we're looking at. And we're kind of inspired to do this today by an exhibit we have right now called Parents Just Don't Understand, which is growing up in Linn County as a teenagers. So we're trying to focus especially on memories that you might have about what it was like when you were younger in Cedar Rapids, some of the places you recollect, the things you did. And maybe we could start with that by saying, what's everyone's school experience? You go to high school here?
All three of us went to Franklin High School, graduated from Franklin High School in 1949.
1949, so everyone was Franklin.
I don't know about this lady.
From Franklin,
Okay.
1945 to 1949.
Okay, we're going to try.
Were you in my class?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
Yeah, it was in June class.
Pardon
There
me?
was two classes, one in January.
Yeah, we were, I was a B student.
Well,
Jim was a B student.
I was June.
You were June?
Yeah. 49.
49.
What was your maiden name?
Then it was Juanita Lubin, or Jones.
Jones?
Jones.
Juanita Jones, okay.
Can't remember him, sorry.
Okay. All right.
We were mid-year.
Mid-year. So this is,
Still had mid-year.
and this is an interesting topic because you know that's a different concept from the way high school works today. You know, you're from the era when we had the four high schools in Cedar Rapids, and from 1930, starting in the fall of 1935 through the spring of 1957, Cedar Rapids went through a period where they went from a period where they had two high schools, the old Washington in downtown Cedar Rapids and old Grant Vocational High School on the west side. And the economics of the 1930s dictated that it was just more cost effective to build large additions to the four already existing junior high buildings that had been built in the early 1920s. So Franklin, McKinley, Wilson, and Roosevelt all became combination junior and senior high school. So this was initiated in the fall of 1935, and all of you were part of that period of time where, if I understand correctly, you were there for 6 years. You were 6 years at Franklin. 7th through 12th grade. And you were really in the core of that period of the Franklin High School. I guess the initial question I had was there always a sense that, what were the, were there in-town rivalries between Franklin and the West Side schools, or was it
Between all schools.
Yes.
between all schools?
Rivalry between all four schools.
Between all four schools, okay. Any in particular that stood out between Franklin and another school, or were they all about equal types
Wilson
of?
had the best football team. Those Bohemians down there ate good. So they had the best football team. Roosevelt was the dirtiest team, okay? McKinley and Franklin, they were nice people.
Okay, so there wasn't a sense that McKinley and Franklin got along better because they were both on the east side.
Not exactly, but not the rivalry with the west side.
The west side, so when it was time to play football for Franklin against Wilson or Roosevelt, then it got interesting.
Yeah, that's right.
Some of the
Okay.
girls slipped away though, married on the west side.
Pardon?
They slipped
Oh,
out of
yeah.
our school,
Some of
married
them.
west
Some of them.
side guys, so
Okay.
they snuck in a little bit.
Well,
But the athletic rivalry was there.
Yeah.
yeah,
The athletic rivalry was there.
okay.
And the reason, I'm sure you know this, the reason there was A and B classes is according to when you were born. So you didn't have to wait a period of time to go to school.
Right.
And quite frankly, I think it's still the best system, but no one uses it.
No.
I mean, you know,
Yeah. The whole concept of a January and June graduating classes. Now, were the January graduating classes, were they considered?
They're smaller.
They were always smaller.
Yeah.
They were always smaller. And was the ceremony quite different
No.
for a January class from a June?
Same thing,
Same thing? How are we doing on sound? Okay, good. All right, well, that's interesting. Let's see, the rivalries are really kind of interesting to hear about. There's no doubt about that. What else besides that's like? Now, you talked about people eventually would marry people from one side of town or the other. Was there a lot of upfront dating going on between West Side and East Side high school students?
I think they were sneaking.
What? They were sneaky?
I think they were sneaking.
They were sneaking.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of it, I think, was between McKinley and Franklin because they were both from the same neighborhood.
Right.
Fifth Avenue divided McKinley and Franklin.
Yeah.
And, I'll tell you another thing that you may or may not know. I should have gone to McKinley High School, okay? But Mr. Deemer, the superintendent of schools, moved on 22nd Street right down at the corner of Upland Drive. So his kids, he wanted to go to Franklin, he changed from Beaver Avenue over to Fifth Avenue.
Okay, this was Arthur Deemer, the longtime
That's
superintendent
right.
of the Cedar Rapids
That's right.
schools.
He
So,
wanted his kids to go to Franklin, so he changed the boundary line.
oh my gosh. Well, this gives a clue into the type of power he liked to yield a little bit.
Well,
you know,
he got by with it.
he got by with it anyway.
Meanwhile,
So,
I went to Franklin, and Franklin had a real educator. What was his name?
Just a minute.
Holman. No, Malcolm Scott
Malcolm
Holman.
Scott Holman, right.
And,
okay.
and
Yeah.
he was a great educator because I got through high school. Okay, and that's all I have to say about that.
Because the high school graduation rates were probably lower
Franklin had
in those days than they were.
1,000 people in the time it was a high school. A friend of ours, mother worked there at Franklin, and he's in our class. And I think he said 4,000 or 4,500 students, while it was a junior high and high school, and it was changed over.
Any other faculty that you recall at Franklin?
Oh, sure.
That stands out, that really sticks with your memory still?
Paul Kreidler is one of them. Paul is deceased now, but he got in a little trouble later in life, but
He was a tough gym.
yeah, he was
He was the gym teacher.
yes, and he really contributed a great deal to the tumbling that went on in Cedar Rapids through with Nissen and that. Because he was a former circus guy.
Okay, so he was into acrobatics. And,
Yeah, he could run up a rope from here to the ceiling like a monkey.
Did he expect all the students to do the same thing?
Well, he didn't expect me to do
Oh, okay, all right.
He tried, but
it. He may have suggested it, but
That's a really interesting connection with the George Nissen and the Nissen Trampoline Company here in Cedar Rapids. Talk about taking an interesting connection with a real local industry that changed the face of.
well, when Mr. Kreidler left the school system, he went to work for Nissen.
Okay. And as we know, Mr. Nissen just passed away just within the last year or two. And
He lived a neighbor to me just over on 27th Street.
Paul Kreidler
And
did?
before he really got going, he had a trampoline in the backyard.
You mean Nissen?
Yeah, and we used to go there and jump on the trampoline.
Oh, wow.
Back in the 30s, late 30s.
yeah. Well, and in those days, Nissen's trampoline factory, I think, was still down on A Avenue Northwest, in the early days. But so he didn't mind people coming over and jumping on the trampoline at all. So that sounds pretty interesting. Where did all of you live again when you went to Franklin? How close to Franklin were you living?
27th, half a block from Arthur School, where I started.
From Arthur School. I was going to ask about the elementaries you went into before was Arthur.
Arthur, in fact, and you were Polk.
I was Polk School.
Polk School.
We lived on B Avenue on 19th, and then we moved to Blake Boulevard at 19th.
So you stayed at Polk
Yeah. they
Through the
let me stay-
transition.
They let me stay the last 2 years at Polk so I could finish there rather than shifting to Johnson, which I was closer to.
Yeah, yeah. So going to only 2 schools for the most part
Yes.
during your education.
No, I went to Johnson.
You went to
To
Johnson.
Johnson. Johnson covered everything from about 4th Avenue southeast over through Grand Avenue. And up and down that corridor.
Right, until they get to the area that covered
Yeah.
by Buchanan, beyond that. so.
Buchanan was on the other side of 4th Avenue.
The other side of 4th Avenue,
On the
okay.
west side of 4th
Okay.
Avenue.
But some kids could only go to 2 schools it was very easy for them to go to 2 schools, like just Polk and then on to Franklin at that
Depends if you
point.
moved. If you moved to another neighborhood, then you'd go to a different grade.
Yeah, you couldn't stay within the same elementary, even if you moved.
How many schools were in Buchanan, not Buchanan, but Johnson, Polk,
Arthur?
and part of Polk went to McKinley.
Did
Because
they?
I worked with
Oh,
Lake
Yeah.
at the hospital, went to McKinley.
Yeah,
And that went out there, and Kenwood, that
Well, you weren't here then.
was the Franklin area,
yeah,
from the northeast side and over to where Fifth Avenue. And
Yeah.
that was the dividing line for
Right.
McKinley.
right. So you would have all gone to school, if all of you went to Franklin, you would have been classmates with anybody coming from, as you said, they'd be from Polk, they'd be from Arthur. I assume some of them were from Garfield
Yes,
Elementary.
yeah.
You had some from the Kenwood School. You said a few perhaps from Johnson, but not a lot.
No, most of Johnson.
Most of Johnson's kids came over.
Yeah, most of Johnson.
Yeah,
came over.
right.
Kenwood's kids went.
Yeah, because we got to remember in those days, a big feeder into McKinley was actually Old Jackson was a feeder into McKinley, and I don't think Jackson fed into Franklin at all, as far as I
No,
know.
no.
Yeah, and then of course Kenwood was about as far out as you could go.
I was up on 36th Street.
You were out on 30. You were in the Kenwood area. Okay. Well, depending on where you lived when you went to Franklin School, did everybody walk?
I did.
Everybody walked?
I walked 4 times a day. I only had lunch at the high school once when I was going there. And it was a mile each way. And a lot of fun.
Okay. It's about the same for everyone else. They walked
Walked 6, 7 blocks,
6, 7 blocks.
back to lunch, back to school. Yeah.
We had a longer lunch hour then, so you could do it,
Because
We did walk.
Yeah.
would you say that the majority of the Franklin High School students did not use the school cafeteria?
I don't say
Geez, I
that.
don't know how that was.
I never ate it the whole time I was there.
I did once.
I did
Yeah.
once or twice.
Yeah.
So that kind of tells you the.
Yeah, you weren't required to eat there, but
It depends how far you live from there, Some of those people in Kenwood and that, they live quite a ways away.
of course, one of the standards of everyone's high school experiences is the lunchroom food any good,
Well,
and
I think our food was good, but
I do too.
it was more fun going home and eating in 3 minutes and start back again.
right,
We had
right.
pizza. We didn't have pizza.
No, we didn't have pizza.
Yeah, I didn't have pizza for lunch.
Took your lunch.
You took your lunch,
A lot of
yeah.
people, I think, took their lunch.
And they would eat it at the school, and then you could eat on, they let you eat on the grounds on nice days, or
Let you eat in the cafeteria, I think.
I think they did too.
Yeah, I think you can eat in the cafeteria.
you could eat in the cafeteria, bring your own lunch. They let people eat outside on the grounds too, I suppose, in nice weather.
Oh, nice day, probably.
Nice day, you probably could, so, yeah. Any other recollections about the environment around the Franklin School? I know there was a railroad line not too far from Franklin in those days, so I imagine the sound
Well,
of
that's where
the trains would always be pretty prevalent,
No.
Not really?
No.
I lived right on those tracks, a half of.
Yeah, he lived right by the tracks.
Okay.
Corner 27th and D Avenue, E Avenue, and the train went right by.
How frequent were the trains in those days?
3, 4 times a day.
3 or 4 times a day?
Yeah.
Okay. Any hardships, like 2 feet of snow you had to walk through every year, or during the winter time, and
Oh,
miles of,
In those days, things were a little different streetwise.
yeah,
And they used cinders, number one, and the streets, there wasn't that much traffic. And one of some of my friends' habits, when the oil truck would come along, we would grab onto the oil truck, and we would slide home on the back of the oil truck. Now, you can't do that today.
No,
There was
no.
always a nice little coating of snow.
Yeah.
Occasionally, you'd hit a dry spot, and it would upset you a little bit, but then you'd keep going on.
Okay, so explain for me why the oil truck.
Well, a lot of people had fuel oil in those days.
Okay.
So he was around servicing the people. with
Okay,
oil
so he was just
furnaces.
a neighborhood service
Yeah.
vehicle coming through.
Yeah.
Okay. And the cinders, explain a little bit more about using cinders for,
That's what they used, I guess, from the power plant down
Had to
here.
be from the power
Yeah, they didn't have sand, they didn't have a lot of sand in those days, and they used cinders.
okay, let's put them over the surface of the,
Now, where they use sand.
yeah.
They didn't have any salt.
Those days, we didn't necessarily get on the street the first day. If we had a big snow.
Oh, that's right.
You're snowed in.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't have much for plows. And 1936, I remember,
That's right.
the big snow.
The big one.
That was when it froze on top, and you could ice skate, if you were a kid, anywhere in Cedar Rapids.
Wow.
We had a picket fence around the backyard, and the snow was deeper in the fence, and if
Yeah.
you sleeted on top, it was like a rink on the
That's
backyard.
right.
over
That's
the
right.
fence.
Now some of you were already in elementary school by the time that big snow hit in 36, right?
I was 5 years old.
Okay,
We had just started
Just started school.
okay. Did they cancel a lot of school for that storm, or you probably can't
You
remember
know,
that?
they didn't cancel schools in those days.
They didn't. I was going to ask you, even at the high school level, when you had the snowstorms, was there any?
I don't remember.
They rarely did.
They rarely did. Okay. And what about, of course, now there's such a common practice of canceling school for heat, in August and June, and no cancellations for, because,
That's the changing of times.
yeah.
Us old hardy people, we didn't have to go through that.
You knew it was time to sweat, that's the way it was.
Right, and of course, Franklin didn't have any, today's students that go to Franklin Middle School, and I'm sure it's nice to know that you can see your old school and it's still doing just fine today, but of course it's all equipped with air conditioning now, and it's got the internet connections, and back then if it got hot, you just opened up all the windows at Franklin School and let the air flow through the building,
You did the same thing at home. You
did the same thing everywhere.
At home.
Used to go down to the basement to cool off.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of that cooling off issue, now, the one place that was air conditioned in Cedar Rapids, long before any place else, was the movie theater.
That's right.
So how often did teenagers go to hang out at the Paramount or any of the other air-conditioned theaters when it was really, really hot on a summer day? I mean, was that a pretty common practice to camp out at the theater?
I didn't participate in that
Yeah.
because I was outside doing something. But I suppose a lot of people did.
I never went to the movie for the air conditioning, ever.
I don't think.
You didn't?
I don't think so.
It was a nice amenity, but it wasn't the main reason.
Saturday afternoon, once in a while, go to the movie, and that's about it.
Well,
Not for air conditioning.
Well, that's a good question. Now thinking about this from the teenage perspective, of course, the high school age, what were the most popular times to go to the movies with your friends or with a date or whatever else? Was it Saturday afternoon? Was it Friday night? Was it Saturday night?
Saturday afternoon.
Saturday afternoon was, some of that was due to the fact, were the serials still popular in the theaters? Yeah, the serial films. And I know the Rialto used to play a lot of those.
I have a lady friend I volunteer with at Mercy Hospital.
Yeah.
About my age. And she went to Polk School, I think, and ended up at McKinley. But all she talks is about the rat hole. The rat hole. She'd go down to the rat hole. That must have been her entertainment.
Well, and we'll clarify for the audiences out there, where we're referencing the old Rialto Theater, which address was 310 First Avenue Northeast. And it was on the same block where today we have a U.S. Cellular Center. And it shared the block with a bunch of old rooming hotels like the Pullman and the Norva and some of those. And it was always the cheapest movie show in town, usually. But
10 cents.
Either that or a nickel. I don't know.
usually
I was over there.
5 cents or a
I
dime,
used to
something
go
like
Get
that.
on the bus at 27th First Avenue, ride downtown for a nickel, and go to the aisle where the Paramount Theater for a dime. And then we got out, Joe and Cliff's was there, and I used to go and get a burger for a nickel, glass of milk for a nickel, get on the bus for a nickel and go back home. My afternoon cost me 35 cents.
Wow.
That was the price.
Was it always Joe and Cliff's?
Joe and Cliff's was right across.
Was that your favorite spot, though, to go for food?
There wasn't too many other ones around.
Weren't too many other ones around,
It was
so.
right across the street.
Yeah, they were right up here at First Avenue and 8th Street, if I remember right. And they had in those days, did they already have I I know they ran a bait shop or sportsman shop right next to their cafe or something like that. So it was kind of like, was that a two-room affair? They had the cafe on one side and
Later they did that.
you go shopping on the other side or something
The
like
local
that. So.
greasy spoon and those.
I can't, the other one we went to was on the other side of town. The
There was
White
one
House.
down, well, there was one downtown. for a
No,
while.
there was one over on
Then they
First
came over
Avenue
here.
called White House, wasn't it, or something like
White
that?
House was on, I thought, 15th Street and First Avenue.
Okay, I'm confused.
We used to take our dates home, then go there and eat, so we
Yeah,
didn't
that's
pay
right.
for it.
And tell lies.
How are the burgers at Joe and Cliff's? Pretty good, or?
Greasy and good. We didn't know the difference.
Greasy.
It was a burger.
It was a burger.
For a nickel, what do you expect, huh?
The forerunner of the burger industry.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of times with going to East Side High School versus West Side High School in Cedar Rapids, you tended to patronize businesses on that side of the river rather than, so the West Side kids might tend to go to more of the West Side Maid-Rite, or they might go to, I know there was a Joe's Cafe down in the 16th Avenue. There was a cafe down in the 16th Avenue area.
Well, you see, we
For a while as well.
had access to automobiles.
Yeah.
We were in high school, later in high school, so you could move around anywhere.
Well,
you wanted.
that's a good topic. Once you got those automobiles as teenagers, where did you go with that car?
As far as you could, as many times you
For
could.
a quarter for the gasoline.
Yeah, you could buy, you could
We
build
used
it.
to chip in by
I was gonna say-
quarters.
So average price of a gallon of gasoline was about a quarter, 20 cents, 20, 25 cents, and you get as many people together as you can. Everyone chips in for the gas.
We could ride all Saturday night for $1.
You could ride and where did you ride all Saturday night?
Up and down First Avenue.
Up and down First
One
Avenue.
of the places. Then
Okay.
we used to run a little through the neighborhoods.
We
At
played
that,
hide and seek.
at that time, the police, that was during the war. And the police had a little problem. They had big Buick cars. And
Okay.
they had a little problem manipulating them like we could manipulate our cars.
Okay.
So,
No, go
The old
ahead.
Buick, they bought three 1942 Buicks. It's all that was left available.
Mm-hmm.
So the city had three 1942 Buicks, they called them, and they had an old thing called Dynaflow Drive.
yeah.
The car wouldn't get out of the way, it's a shadow. So if we saw one out in front here, we could race wide open to Marion, and they couldn't catch us anyway. They just
Wow.
couldn't get going. So we kind of had our own for 4 years.
And all the way to Marion, huh?
Well, wherever you wanted to go, because you didn't want to get caught, and we were very seldom ever caught, okay? I was never caught.
Did you know of anyone that was caught?
I might have, but I can't remember who they were.
Okay, I just wonder what the fines might have been, or, yeah.
Probably a talking to, probably a talking.
What was the general perception of the police by the teenagers in those days? I mean, was it ambivalent, or?
In those days, all the policemen, the firemen, and the postmen pretty much were Czechs.
Okay,
Almost all of them. They all belonged to the fire department.
Yeah.
You remember all those guys, and they did all right, you know. They made a living, the wives did work, and they raised a family, and they did all right.
Well, there wasn't any trouble in those days like there is now. I mean, we had things we did that were mischievous, but not compared to what's now. I mean, like on Halloween, and that time, you'd have 3 or 4 days of Halloween activity, and not on Halloween, all the days before and the days
no, I
after.
didn't realize it was a 3 to 4 day affair.
Yeah,
So
it
it's like,
could be.
yeah, okay.
Well, you didn't have anything else to do, you might as well be involved in that. But outside of that, and I'll tell you a little story because I love it. I lived on Upland Drive, okay? And there was about 4, 5, 6 boys, males. And I was one of the youngest ones. But we had 2 sisters called the Chapin sisters. And they were teachers, I think, at Roosevelt School. And they got the reputation of being germ crazy,
Okay,
okay? So they had a fenced-in yard, they had a gargoyle in the yard and other things, and they got excited. In fact, when the postman would go to their gate and go inside, they'd come out afterwards in summertime and hose the gate down.
wow,
That's how they got the germ crazy deal. Okay?
sure.
Now, quite frequently, they called the police, okay? And I was in a couple of sessions where the police arrived, and at one time, I think we got to go down to the station and see the police station and listen to their pitch down there. So, but outside of that, the police were good, but they didn't have the trouble they do today.
Right, right.
You know?
Well, I mean, we hear, I mean, because cruising the avenue by teenagers is still happening today. I mean, in
Oh,
20,
that's right.
you go down First Avenue East this past summer in 2012, and the current high school kids are still moving up and down the avenue.
See,
And
we don't know where to buy dope yet after all 8 years. We still don't know where to go.
We don't want her, but we
Well, but I don't know where to go.
You can find it if you
I
want.
suppose you stood out in the street with a sign.
I'd be in 15th Street and stand around and watch. And
Where's-
learn it in a hurry.
so no indications of drug abuse and
No.
the kind of
Never.
teenage issues that have come in the later decades, of
Alcohol
course.
abuse didn't come till about the time you were a senior in high school.
Okay, so there wasn't a real issue that was apparent to any of you that people had issues with, you know, alcoholism, drinking too much beer as teenagers, you know.
You saw people that were inebriated, but
Yeah.
that's part of the game, you know?
It
Yeah,
wasn't high school level. It wasn't high school.
but not in high school. I mean, people knew not to do that at the high school level.
We
so.
did frequent occasionally, some of us, places that they served liquor, and places they had slot machines, and those kind of things. But, you know, it's just a new experience.
Yeah, any of those kinds of places you can think of specifically that?
One of
to
them was
go-
down, there are a couple of them at Solon, because that was a wide open county. There was one down at Shueyville.
Okay,
Shueyville, those were the three.
so this sounds like a teenage adventure where you're crossing the border into Johnson County
That's right.
to do
Well,
something a little bit more interesting than you might be able to do in
That's right.
Lynn County.
To get in trouble.
Yeah, to get in trouble.
Yeah, and play the slot machines.
Okay.
And drink a little liquor if you wanted to.
Now, some of you said you got out of high school in as late as 1949, is that?
49.
Okay, so it's a little too early for the, because my recollection is that was about the year that the first drive-in movie theater opened up in Cedar Rapids, but it was way over on the west side.
That might be.
So that might have,
Been before that.
I know that
There
was,
was two, wasn't there? There was one east side of town.
well, Marion had one on the Twixtown Road, and certainly that had to affect the teenage options once that appeared.
That's right, that's right.
There weren't any until after we graduated.
After you graduated, so I'm thinking,
There wasn't any while we were in high school.
I don't think so.
yeah, so the movies were regulated to the indoor theaters, which I'm sure were pretty popular. I mean, you mentioned the Rialto, but I'm sure there was still opportunities to see films at the Paramount and the Iowa,
The one down there by the Garrity Bank.
the State Theater, and
It was very popular.
and the Times on First Avenue was very popular with the Franklin kids, because that was just close proximity.
Yeah.
You know, you could really walk to the Times.
When did that happen? That thing's probably happened.
That was in high school.
Yeah, about the time we were in high school.
Well, my research shows that, I believe it was Mr. Roy Metcalf was involved with the ownership of that for a long time, and that building opened up as a theater in Christmas 1941, if that sounds about right.
Okay, that's probably.
So
about
right after Pearl Harbor, that building, which had formerly been a garage building for the Commonwealth, was redesigned to be a new neighborhood theater. And I think it sounds like to me it was instantly a hit
Yes, it was.
with the neighborhood and with the younger groups to go
Kissed
see
my
a film
first
there.
girl at the Times Theater.
Did you
you?
Saturday afternoon.
Do you hear that?
I heard someone say he kissed his first girl at the Times Theater.
He never
Oh,
told me that as long as I've known him.
they always say you either do or you don't remember the movie. What do you say?
Cynthia Kramer, I couldn't tell you what the movie was. I don't know if I ever saw it.
Maybe that's the whole idea. You make sure it's a movie you don't care if you see it or not, you know.
Joe,
So,
you shouldn't be hearing all this stuff.
are you okay with it? You can join the conversation if you like. So, but any other hangouts besides Joe and Cliff's you've mentioned? Sometimes, what's that?
Used to have a teen club.
A Keene.
We would always
That's
go
a
down
basement of the
after the football
YMCA.
games,
He went to the Keene Teen Club after the football games at Franklin,
like in the bottom part of the YMCA.
Right.
ground floor of the
Belly
YMCA.
was.
Yeah.
And they would
Later
have
on.
a jukebox,
Mhm.
dance,
Yeah.
and there was no liquor. There was nobody chaperoned or anything. But then they would have, because I went with a Roosevelt guy, which,
See,
that was the
somebody
thing.
sliding across town on me.
The girls went with the Roosevelt guys, and you just, and Dave, we got married.
Yeah.
Dave Lubin was your husband?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't get
picked
that
up
till
on
right
reading.
now. I
We
did.
know Dave, we know Dave.
You know, Dave.
This is a learning experience for all of us, so yeah.
Dave just died just in January.
He used to live across town on us, we didn't know it, see?
And we went, and how Dave courted me was on a motorcycle, or
Motor scooter?
a motor scooter.
Motor scooter.
Yeah, that he had fixed up, you know. So he'd go, he was on 11th Street west, and I was on 36th Street, northeast. And it was like, I don't know, 6 miles or something. And then his dad was Lubin Interior.
Yeah, Lubin Interiors, yeah.
And so then there was times where my dad would have to call his dad, you know, like, where are they in between? Are they home with somebody else?
How did you meet him? The Teen Club?
It was a blind date,
Yeah.
and it was Bob Pearson.
Oh, Bob Pearson, okay. Pearson
Okay, and I
Forest.
was gonna show you this.
Oh, you did, you
That
brought
was
something.
in-
Okay.
That was in
'Cause I know Al Pearson pretty well.
Bob Pearson.
That's
Yeah,
Bob.
Pearson's florist over here.
Yeah.
He married a Roche.
Yeah.
Okay, look at
And
that.
Roche, which is there.
Well, and you brought this wonderful article from July 14th, 1949,
You can have that,
under Teen Talk.
yeah.
And
Right, that was, we were seniors, Dave had just gone.
And there's this
That was a-
great picture of two couples, steady twosomes is the headline in the paper.
Are you one of them in there?
I'm at,
Yeah,
I
that's
was
you in the picture right there.
majorette
Can you see that, Alan?
for
or-
Franklin,
Yeah.
for the band.
And
All right.
there you are. Do you want to look at that, or
Yeah, I
yeah?
want to see.
Yeah, okay, we got,
Remember the three of us? Have you ever seen the three of us before?
I know you probably didn't remember me either. I was short, naturally.
Well, you were probably
So I
Nick's-
had to get a.
You were probably in Nick's class.
So I had to do
was,
a super long baton
uh-huh.
and the loudest whistle I've ever had because the band couldn't hear me. They couldn't see it other than.
You were you led the band?
Majorette.
I was the majorette at that
Majorette,
time.
okay.
You still twirl the baton?
Pardon?
You still twirl the baton?
I can.
Great. You should have brought it with you, didn't you?
See,
I gave it to my niece, but
you say you never lose the,
the grandkids have me do it now.
oh my gosh. Well, I've heard wonderful things about the Keene Teen Club, that it was a very popular attraction.
It's the only place in town for young people, you know?
Yeah.
You can meet all kinds of people. And there were, of course, there were a lot of, the Roosevelt, when you go to the games, the football games, and it was just a thing you just met afterward.
And being downtown would lend a little sense of neutral ground.
Yeah.
Like you said, you were meeting up with someone from Roosevelt School. You know, since you're downtown, you're kind of in the halfway point between the east side and west side, so
And I know, well, Dave's dad was just putting, doing the Lubin Interiors in 1947.
yeah.
And
Didn't meet him.
so that was on 10th Street and 3rd Avenue.
Yep, 10th and 3rd.
It was where the IC church was. And then
Yeah.
Dave's dad, and I worked that summer for, it was a Ryan drugstore. And my dad was in the ice cream business, was Borden's ice cream.
Okay.
And so I was just working there the summer, and then Dave's dad kept saying, telling Dave, oh, there's a cute girl next door, blah, blah, blah. And we were very stubborn, we didn't want to meet each other, you know, because it was being set up.
Yeah.
So Bob Pearson and Nancy, because I was a friend of Nancy, she was from Franklin, and her sister Jean, and then Wilda, she lived right there in Kenwood.
Who?
Wilda Squires.
We know Wilda.
Real well.
Well, I dated her.
We did? Anyway, it was set up from that we would meet, and it was, then at that time, it was in the fall of the year that they had set up there, that I would meet him. Well, we fought the whole time because I think we were just unhappy to, you know, that this was
You
set
ever
up.
meet Bob Melcher?
Yeah, Bob Melcher was part of it that was trying to set us up too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe it.
He was
Okay.
involved in everything.
Yeah.
And that Dave knew Trudy, who I guess it was his brother, Trudy Melcher.
Loon, no, Toonie.
Trudy.
Who knows,
He knew
yeah.
all of the
Leon.
Roosevelt people.
Toonie's Leon, he's got
Yeah.
little bows down in
Yeah.
Checktown.
Oh, yeah, he's still,
And
yeah,
his son
important.
Jeff runs it.
Yep.
Tavern there. It just reopened.
Yeah, and
Bob said tuning was too cheap to buy flood insurance, he lost everything.
Well,
He had to
I'm not so
come-
sure you could
I
insure
don't
that
think
building.
anybody-
well,
I don't think anybody bought flood insurance, did they, Mike?
no, I don't think so. Not in a lot of those areas. I don't think the Borgenson. I don't know if the Borgensons did either. You know.
Even this last flood, a lot of people weren't sure.
No. Some people still rebuild with their own money.
Well,
You
you read the
know.
paper this morning, they're in trouble because it's the government.
Yeah.
And unbelievable, but anyway.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Bob came across town, started dating one of our gals, Erlinda White, remember her?
Who?
Bob Nelson,
Yeah.
Erlinda. White Hill.
White Hill?
Well, he was dating her, in fact, they almost got married.
Yeah. I mean, I don't need to keep harping back on this, but you keep using these references like someone slid across town and coming across town. You know, I mean, was this kind of the type of conversation that would get gaffes going at the high school level? It's like, oh no, how could they come across town and do that? You know, I mean, was it really that big of a deal? Or was it just more of a part of the lingo of living in Cedar Rapids?
Cedar
You know,
Rapids was only about 45, 50,000 people at the time.
yeah.
And you got 4 high schools that, I don't know how many students we had. We had maybe 300 students at Franklin High School. I don't know those numbers. but
That sounds about right. for that
My
time.
class was, our class, Jacob's bigger because we were mid-year.
Yeah.
We only had 52 people in our class.
We had 100.
You know, and they had 100.
Yeah,
I think three.
I thought we had 120
yeah.
in our class.
I think we had one.
You know, and
I think it was the competitiveness, Mark.
Oh, yeah.
Between the schools.
yeah.
That, did it. There, we were still really friendly with an awful lot of people, but it was the competitive.
Oh, yeah.
The athletic competitiveness.
Yeah. But really, I mean, from the Cedar Rapids history perspective, it was a fairly recent concept of East Side and West Side competitiveness because Cedar Rapids didn't even get a second high school until 1915 with the Grant School opening up. And my grandfather was in the last class of that school in 35. And, you know, after that, and even they were not real heavy into athletic competition until the later part of that history. So it was a fairly new concept by the 40s, barely just a few years into the full-blown competitive nature of the sports program. Did it seem like there was kind of a building up of the athletic programs at Franklin, or you were there, or was it just something that was just there and they just kind of maintained what was there before you got there? Or?
It was always there when we were there.
I don't think it was any increase in building up or anything.
Okay.
I think it was
Yeah.
pretty much constant.
Now, what facilities did you guys use for your athletics? There was no Kingston Stadium yet in those days.
They had their own, Roosevelt.
You had your own football field.
Hill Park, didn't we?
Yeah.
Hill Park over by Roosevelt School, right back.
Okay, so you used the old athletic field
All of the.
by Roosevelt School. So you went over to the west side. Yeah.
Football field
Well,
down
we had a practice field, but for the
That's what
games, for the competitive games, they were at Hill Park.
At Hill Park,
Yeah, over there.
which is now the
Athletic field for Roosevelt.
yeah, for Roosevelt School off E Avenue, which was of course the formal home of the baseball
Yeah,
park
that's right, the ball park.
before the Veterans Coliseum.
Football
Yeah.
field
Yeah.
was in the track.
Yeah.
Is this before Veterans Coliseum or afterwards?
Well, Veterans Memorial Coliseum went up in '49, if that helps a little bit, because I get this information from Bob Brooks, and he's a pretty reliable source on local facilities history.
Well, I-
you know,
I've spent a lot of
he said he used to broadcast out at Hill Park.
I spent a lot of time out those baseball games at
Mm-hmm.
Hill Park, which was a nice facility.
But you're saying you went out to the Hill Park area for football?
Well, when we played, that's where they played.
That's where they played.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was either before Hill Park or it wasn't after Hill Park, so it had to be before Hill Park.
Okay.
And I don't know where we went. Where'd we go from there?
Well, you would have gone to Kingston and later.
Yeah, I suppose-
We were always at Hill Park.
You were.
Because even when I went to college and came back for a game, it was at Hill Park.
Okay, well, he said in 1949 is when they built the baseball stadium.
Yeah.
The
We were
Veterans
gone
Baseball
then.
Park, yeah.
Yeah, we were gone.
Okay, well, that's interesting to know that. What about any of you involved in dramatics or anything like that at Franklin, or
Well, I was in the senior play.
you were? Okay.
So was I.
Was there an
I had one line.
you had one line?
I think I had 3.
I can't remember what it was.
Now, you used the term senior play because now they include all the grade levels, and I don't know if they did then.
No, we had one.
Was it
We
only
had our own.
was it only seniors that were allowed to do that? Okay.
That class.
And they had their own class.
Okay.
So you had two of them.
Okay, that's interesting because for quite a while now at the high school level, it's pretty much all 3 or 4 grades can be involved in the dramatic
Well, there's
presentation.
no talent. See, we had a lot of talent in those days.
Well, I knew there was part of that I was missing. I just couldn't figure out. They were more talented back then. Okay, I gotcha. So, well, they would get real talented real quick, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Now, you mentioned Halloween and cruising the avenue, any of the kinds of tomfoolery that went around, things you shouldn't have been doing, some things that you didn't really want your parents to know about that you were doing in Cedar Rapids. I've heard different stories of different things over the years. My own grandmother told me about how they'd walk on top of the boxcars at the rail yards as a shortcut to downtown and these kinds of things.
We didn't have any outhouses to turn over because there wasn't any in town.
Doggone, all that indoor plumbing was already in
yeah,
place.
that's
So.
Turn over garbage cans.
Garbage cans.
Okay, which were noisy in those days,
Yeah. We did a lot of things. I don't think we want to get too deep into those, but
Okay.
we frustrated a lot of people.
One night you soaped the windows, hope they weren't screens, so that room was creepy.
Right.
Then another night we tipped the garbage cans or run over with cars.
Okay.
Another night we cut everybody was, clothes were outside to dry, cut all the wires on the clotheslines, they had to redo those. Then there was Halloween.
And then
Finally got there.
At the end, we got real brave as we got bigger. We would tie the doorknob shut somehow on the front and then ring the doorbell and hope that the guy couldn't break loose. And that's when we got real brave.
See, I lived close to went over by Arthur. From our house on, from the tracks to Mount Mercy College was a field. No houses.
Yeah.
And there was a farmland over there. I don't know who owned the farm.
Well, it was left over from the old George Green estate. Yeah.
Where we live now.
Yeah.
Anyway, they used a cow pasture over there, so we used to go there and get the cow pies and put them in a bag, and on Halloween, and put them on the front steps, set the bag on fire, and we ring the bell. Then they'd come out and stomp on that, try to put the fire on us. Well, you know,
Those were
flying.
the days when there wasn't any drugs, there wasn't any of this stuff. You just wanted to have fun.
Well, in a lot of ways, it sounds like a good athletic program because you really had to learn how to run fast.
No. It was dark, you could just disappear.
Okay, you could just slip into the dark somewhere and so forth, yeah.
Incidentally, I think that's the field that Roy Skogman built his first houses in. Probably.
Could
He
be.
came back just after the war.
In the flat area at the bottom of the hill.
Yeah,
Okay.
Franklin Avenue.
Franklin
That's
Avenue.
what he's talking about, because that's right across the railroad tracks.
We
Okay,
used to set that field on fire every fall.
okay.
Grew weeds
Was
was
it,
tall.
okay, so there wasn't any crops in the field, it was just a,
It was a swampland down in the middle.
yeah.
From 27th Street and D Avenue to the college. that
Yeah.
was- And from 27th down to Franklin Avenue. That was a huge field.
Oh, yeah.
My dad tried to buy that. And he went down to see Van Vecht and Schaefer at the bank. And he says, "Kid, you can't afford that." Well, my dad was pretty young. He said, "You can't afford that." You know how much it was? For the whole thing? $4,500.
Wow.
That's
The whole
That's
thing.
probably what Skogman bought it for.
Probably.
Sold the
Probably.
lots off for 25,000 feet.
Yeah, yeah.
No, lots for $2,000, $3,000 in those days.
Less than that.
But that thing was, but we used to go down there, we'd wait till the wind got in the right direction, we'd go down by the Mount Mercy, and we'd build it, we'd start a fire, and that field, it burned like.
Holy.
Big fire of the year.
Did you stay while it was burning, or did you
Watch
disappear?
it, sure.
Oh, okay.
The fire department usually showed up
Yeah,
and,
they came out, and they had those great big, long beaters with the
Yeah.
burlap, and they beat on the,
Thank God you are in jail for arson.
that thing used to jump 27th Street and go to the next field, go to the farm.
and you knew enough to stay out of the smoke so you didn't get the smoke inhalation or something like that, it's like, holy cow. Were there issues with teenagers with smoking at all, or were most of the teenagers smoke in those days?
I
Or
started on basket
Oops,
reeds.
sorry.
On basket reeds at Boy Scout camp. They were good.
Oh, they were. How early were kids smoking?
Well, as soon as you wanted to.
Okay.
soon as you get, they get an acorn out, put a hollow pipe in it, find a cigarette butt on the street.
That's right.
Put the tobacco in the pipe and
That's
start
right.
smoking.
Well, of course, the advertising nationally was smoking was healthy for you anyway, so.
I had a friend, his daddy smoked a lot of Herbert Terriers, I think it was, and he had one of these ashtrays, you know, big one with a punch thing on the top. And we would get those out of there, and he didn't smoke them down too short. We'd smoke a few of those, and whatever you could get.
Well, yeah. What about smoking around high school? How were they with that?
Well,
I don't think so.
Across the street, you had to get off the ground.
Yeah, you had to get off the ground. So did you bother any particular private residential property owner as a place to smoke cigarettes across from Franklin? Or
I didn't smoke at school.
you didn't smoke at school?
Smoked at odd times.
One time, the three of us and somebody else, we were going to Minnesota camping. Took his dad's car, and his dad had already, he traded it off, and that we took.
Oh, traded off car.
The traded off car, yeah. White Pontiac, 46. I'll never
Okay.
forget it. He bought a 47. Anyway, Jack and I are in the back seat, we got brand new corncob pipes.
Wow.
So we're gonna break these babies in and smoke. So we lit the pipes and stuck them out the window.
You hold them out the
inside.
window, let that break it in
And
for you.
let the wind break in so we didn't have to puff on it so hard. And the ashes flew back and burned up the back.
Unfortunately, my ashes flew back in, and burned a big hole in Jim's dad's car. Jim's dad was a heck of a guy. Never raised Cain about that.
Really?
No.
Well, maybe that's another thing to look at here is that, you know, one of the great emotional issues with just that's always being a teenager is the relationship with the parents, you know, and how were the parents back then when you were teenagers? I mean,
Parents had been through this all, and nothing's new in life. The parents had been through all this.
and what era were your parents teenagers? 20s? A little bit earlier than that, or?
Yeah, probably my dad.
Yeah,
Yeah, 20s.
early 20s. Okay, yeah. So they've been through. They knew.
Well, my dad happened to be a kind of an individual, and he left home when he was 18 years old and came to Cedar Rapids. And at those days, and my father-in-law too, in those days, 8th grade was basically the end of high school.
Yeah.
And they were able to, you know, what still is.
Right.
Still is, a kid can quit high school now in 8th grade. I don't know what he's going to do, but he can quit and go on his way. But in those days, that was kind of the norm. And so, you know, when you're a kid, 18 or 14 years old or whatever it is, and you're out on your own, things are a little different. You know?
Yeah.
So they had gone through all of this.
Okay.
And my father was very lenient. And Jim's father was a little different than my father, but he was good.
He was a pretty good parent. I mean, as far as
He was an excellent parent, so was my mother.
okay, so there wasn't like laying down the law, mom, your dad, and you know, it's a little bit. There's always a little bit of that. I mean, they're not going to let
There's
you.
always some law, but
Yeah.
not very much.
Right. But Cedar Rapids in those days had a better, because it was such a smaller populated community. I always got the impression that there was just a better sense of, you know, this is how we behave as a community, and we don't cross certain barriers and certain behaviors, and now it's such a larger community that I'm sure you've all noticed this too, and especially even amongst the teenage age groups. You know, you read about things today involving teenagers that I'm sure a lot of you, let me know if I'm right or wrong about this, you probably will never hear about this sort of thing, you know.
Like a young kid today would go down the alley or down and look in the garbage cans and find a coffee can, put it on the ground, stomp on it, make it curl around your foot, lock to your shoe, put a string on it, and walk with cans under your feet.
I never did that.
Well, I did, and then you play kick the can. These
We
kids
play
today, they
kick the
don't know
can.
what, they don't even comprehend what we
They don't know what
do.
that
We
is,
entertain
yeah.
ourselves.
We had a big whiskey bottle collection. Can't remember.
You didn't drink it all.
No,
Okay, all right,
we went
okay,
down the
okay.
alleys. Today, there's very few alleys.
That's true. Yeah, it's true. I mean,
The alley
so
was-
many of the established neighborhoods were all alley serviced.
Yeah, and
You
we
know,
went
'cause
down-
they weren't built with driveways, so they had
we
the
went
alleys,
down to
yeah.
the alleys and collected whiskey bottles out of it, and so we had a.
Because nobody
whiskey bottle.
recycled like they do today, so yeah.
No, but it was something, you know, to do. But today, you couldn't find an alley.
Any other types of favorite drinks as teenagers? Was soda pop a big deal already at that time, or you know, and or not, or
Coke and cigarettes, that was a big.
Coke and cigarettes?
If you smoked a cigarette and had a Coke, you were really committing.
and
whatever.
cigarettes were about how much in those days?
10 cents a pack.
About 10 cents a pack. So pretty cheap habit,
I
you
quit
know.
when they were 25, and that was 1982, I think.
They're only $6 now.
Yeah, they're only six.
Yeah, they're only $6. It's only gone up. They've only gone up about 400%. You know.
Smoking's an expensive habit today.
Yeah, I just say, you know, when your habit gets too expensive, maybe it's time to stop it. You know. So, any other places you guys remember eating at? I mean, I know you went along First Avenue. You mentioned the Times Theater. But I don't know, were there places like Krebs Dutch Girl? And,
Yes, very, very
We went to
important
school with
place.
them.
You did, yeah. And tell me more about Krebs Dutch Girl, because this is a place that is mentioned frequently amongst generations of teenagers going into the early 1960s. I've heard different reports. It was a dairy, it was a restaurant. Did it vary from time to time? What type of a place was
It
Krebs?
started as a dairy, and then they
cream.
they built it. Yeah, they built the place out there on First Avenue, didn't they? Out there where the lock place.
Yeah, this is 2901 First Avenue and 29th Street. Yeah, it's now John's Lock and Key on that corner, across the street from the cellar door resale shop.
Big hangout for young
Krebs
people
built
and
that,
older
didn't
people.
he?
My impression was that Krebs built that building.
I think they did.
Yeah.
Jack Krebs was a classmate.
Yeah, Jack.
Okay, yeah.
He's deceased now.
So did they do dairy delivery too?
I think so originally.
Like milk delivery and some of that too?
Their dairy farm was out at the end of Highway 100. Go across 13, and it was up there about a mile. That was
Okay.
That was their dairy farm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was their ice cream really good?
Oh, yeah.
They had some good, it was good all homemade ice cream?
Phosphates,
Yeah.
What they call phosphates, fizzy.
Yeah.
Cost
Like a,
Cost
would be a
nickel.
float where you could
Like
put.
a float.
Okay,
It was a
so
nickel.
they had kind of a restaurant seating in there. They had a counter,
Real nice booze.
real nice
I think
booze.
they had food. I think they had food.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, because
Not a wide variety, but
it
just,
seems to me at some point they gravitated more towards a food menu, where you could stop in and have a
I think
meal
they got out of the dairy business at the end.
at the
I
end.
think they, yeah.
Yeah,
There was 4 or 5 dairies here in town at that time, that was not.
but not every dairy would run a restaurant in conjunction with their, you know, you had other places like Searles Dairy and
Across the street over
and
here.
the Dow's family ran, I'm thinking they were the ones that were they the ones that ran the Dairy Maid stores? You know, but I know the Dow's and Searles and some of these other well-known local names.
Bendler's.
Bindler's was another one that kind of come to mind as far as what they did, just pretty much did straight home delivery, and maybe that's not.
Krebs filled a niche by getting into that business.
And then very popular corner, close to Franklin, very close to
First
Franklin.
Avenue traffic.
Oh yeah,
Jack, when we graduated, we had an all-night deal at Krebs Dutch Grill.
Okay.
okay.
We could come there, and I don't think we danced there, but maybe we could.
Well, there was a grocery store on almost every corner.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know there was one at,
Krebs was on this side, across the street was Scalero's, on the other side was the Aussie.
right, you had the Aussies and Scoleros,
Down on 27th was Jensen.
Jensen's,
That's right.
Jensen's Grocery.
Came Yachts.
Yeah, John's Grocery.
Of course, by the time I was a kid, that was a Paramount Pharmacy later on, yeah.
Oh, but Nelson's Meat Market was up there on the
Yeah.
corner of 32nd.
Frankie Voff.
Oh, was it up there?
Yeah, Nelson's had a place near 32nd. Of course, that's where you get into the area that had formerly been sort of the main street of the town of Kenwood. At one time, they had a lot of stores along there,
It
so
wasn't just a meat market, it was a grocery.
it was a grocery as well, yeah, exactly.
But he specialized in meat.
It wasn't there a long time, was it just an old tavern? There was a place called the Blue Moon along there for a long time, you remember? And the building is still there.
It's still a tavern.
It's right next to that new come and go store they just put up, but I got the impression
Well,
that
it's still a tavern,
Still a tavern.
still a tavern, I think it's
not the
called
Blue Moon. It's
the R Place or something, I can't remember what it's called, but,
That's right.
a hole in the wall.
The Blue Moon.
yeah, but it's just one of those really old buildings that's been around forever.
It's a dump the city never expanded.
But was it a dump when the Blue Moon was there?
Well, it was always.
It was a little younger.
I've heard references to Dysart's on First Avenue as well. Is this something that was
That's the other.
a part of your growing up too?
That's the
Yeah.
other ice cream and candy place.
Okay,
And
Dysart's.
That was a very nice
That was
place.
top dog.
Okay. What were the best things they made there that you always went back for?
One of them's candy. They were big into
Also,
candy.
big candy, and they would always, at Christmas time, you'd always get the like cinnamon or different types of candy cane.
Remember had a
Wow.
ramp going up?
Yeah.
As you walked in, you were up
Still
that
resident, the
ramp.
buildings, is the building still?
The
there?
Dizer building, I'm afraid itself was taken down. If you remember in recent years, Soundrels had moved into their old building and then it sat abandoned for a long time. The Dizer home was built right next door to the store, and the Dizer house is now the wedding chapel.
Okay,
Okay.
So that's the old Dizer home.
okay.
But I've heard a lot of good things about Dizers, and it just seemed like it was a really just top quality, always a good experience going to get something there.
Wonderful
Good,
spot.
and teenagers,
We
yeah.
even went as kids, I can remember being
Yeah.
out there when we were 8 or 10 years old.
So this is definitely a multi-generational. I mean, kids could go there, teenagers could go there, you know, adults could go there. There was not a feeling that anybody was kind of excluded.
Daggett was running that thing.
Okay.
Related. Did he? And his brother was the person.
I had the
that
pleasure of meeting the daughter. The daughter and her husband belonged to our church. They're passed away now, but they just got to where they couldn't run it anymore.
Yeah, yeah. How about bakeries? You guys remember a good bakery in town? That was
There's Snack Zero.
Yeah, right down.
next era. Yeah.
Real close to Dizers.
Yeah.
Yeah, about same block, 1500 block of First Avenue Southeast, yeah.
Holland Bakery was on the corner of 15th and First.
Right, I think that's the Music Loft building now, if I remember right. So there's a lot of, quite a little strip of things there.
That would be right, that's where that was.
And then Weaver Weaver had a supermarket there at,
Sunshine, what's the
No,
name of it?
Sunshine Market was there.
Sunshine Market was on
That was started by
Burns were
by
there.
Bill
Yeah.
Valentine.
Valentine.
And you may even know the Valentines, you lived out in the
Bill
north side,
Valentine.
didn't you?
That Sunshine,
Rings a bell.
Sunshine Market,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Tell you a little story about that. My,
But the Sunshine?
My wife's family came here in the 40s during the war, and they came from Detroit. And in Detroit, you had to have food stamps and shoe stamps and everything else. They came out here, and my wife's mother got familiar with Bill Valentine that ran the Sunshine Market. She never had to use any food stamps. I mean, that's the difference between Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and being in New York City or somewhere like that.
Yeah.
But there was always, during the war, there was always plenty of food and everything. And remember, we used to wear the recycled army boots from that guy over across the river, where, what's over there now? It was on A Avenue right across the, there was a lumber yard there. You know all this stuff.
Well, it was a Hawkeye lumberyard,
Yeah,
so that's probably what you're
Down
thinking
the
about,
street, There were
yeah.
some buildings, business buildings, and there was a shoe guy there. And he was big in selling recycled
Army boots.
army boots.
Okay,
And of course, that was a fad, having on a pair of big
Okay.
overalls and a pair of army boots and all that.
okay, I'm gonna make a note of that, because that's a F Avenue area, which had a lot of little interesting storefronts along there, yeah.
We had sugar ration stamps.
Uh-huh,
Gas
We had gas ration stamps.
yeah.
We used to steal gas ration stamps, so we
Okay,
could
well,
drive
but
back.
things were
Oh
a
my
lot easier to
gosh.
get here than they were anywhere else.
Well, in the same way that you go a little bit earlier than the 40s, when you know the evidence shows that Cedar Rapids was actually got to be a little more depression-proof towards the later 30s. We know things like you know, Kramer's store downtown was putting up a new building in 37, and I remember talking to people like Robert Armstrong myself in the past, saying there was just kind of a general policy around Cedar Rapids during the Great Depression that they weren't going to let any staff go. They cut everyone down to 10 or 15 hours a week. But the thing is that as a community of Cedar Rapids, we ride this thing together, and we'll come through it together, and that's exactly the way they played it out. Of course, it didn't hurt that we had Collins Radio, which was a booming technology during the 30s.
Well, we
And it
had-
didn't hurt that we had an oatmeal factory, which people were still eating at
And we
during
had
the 30s.
Pennington Ford.
And we had some,
Wilson Company, and we had pretty
Yeah.
good industry here.
we had a good diverse industry that was still needed during the Great Depression as well,
Right in
yeah.
the middle of the food belt, too.
Yeah, exactly. But getting back to our teenage experience, I don't want to get too straight from that, but your social events at Franklin School, the dances, were they always held at the school only, or did you occasionally have an event at the Montrose or the Roosevelt? Or
No, well, the King Club was the biggest deal.
I can
You had to go
remember,
out, you didn't have,
No.
I don't think, we didn't even have.
You didn't have any socials or dances?
There,
Or?
you senior,
yeah, we,
junior,
Mark,
or
we
senior.
did. Because I can remember, I didn't even think about asking a girl to dance, but the girls asked the boys to dance.
Yeah.
And that was.
That's why I can't remember.
In
They
High
never
school?
asked me.
Yeah.
Girl.
Really, that was a pretty common practice.
I don't remember that.
Okay.
It may have been 7th or 8th grade or 9th, it may
Yeah.
have been 10, 11, and 12.
Yeah.
But I can remember doing that at school.
I don't remember.
Yeah, but Tony, you can, I can see a real, there's a lot of advantages to staying in the same building for 6 years as all of you did, is that you kind of get into this pattern of comfort.
Well, you know a lot of people. A lot of people know you.
Yeah, and by the time you're a senior at Franklin, you've got this down, you know, I mean, you know everyone in and out by
Older
then.
fellow, older.
Yeah, and you've got a lot of range of age
I was
groups.
maybe in 10th grade, and they were, okay, like Leo Pfeiffer. and-
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Dave Lange and
Yeah.
Peter Stamens. They were older than.
That's right.
Right.
A lot of the gals dated older guys in high school.
A lot of them did.
Kind of dumped us off to
Chapman.
the side.
The
I
Chapman.
understand.
It's tough being
They
an,
had cars. They had cars, and they had more money, and the whole thing.
They're more mature too, you know?
Yeah.
I think you've hit upon a couple of things that probably are pretty timeless. You know, there's something said about, you know, I think most men will admit that the time they would not want to go back to is being in 9th grade. You know, you just don't have any advantage towards guys of most other ages at the time. You know.
Well, just to change things around.
To change things around a little bit, okay, all right.
When you get out working, trying to make a living, you think back on how wonderful high school was, okay?
Yeah, maybe you didn't always think about it every day you were there, but when you look back,
Find out how wonderful it was.
yeah, yeah. So what about prom? The prom was at the school? I take it, you know, in the gymnasium, I presume.
Did we have a prom?
Did you have a prom? Yeah.
Would have been down in the
gym.
big gymnasium.
Yeah,
Down
yeah,
on the
Franklin.
first floor.
Okay.
Oh, I can't remember the prom even.
Oh my
Did we have a
goodness.
prom?
Yes.
Well, I only.
Class had a prom.
Yeah, I won't even dare ask what the theme was, and I won't even dare do that. It's probably in your yearbooks, you know. So who knows?
I remember it was something that they had a lot of stars and
Uh-huh.
like it would be like an outside type thing, dinner.
They all, I
What do you
mean, the
mean, like it
teachers,
was a sky or something?
well, you know,
yeah.
the teachers tried to do right by whatever it was.
We just they decorated it. It was no big deal. I mean, you know, if you went, fine. If you didn't, all right.
Right. It's quite an industry now.
Yes.
I couldn't afford to go to the prom, nor my parents couldn't afford to send me to the
The
prom.
women never married when we were going.
Was that still true of the female faculty? They were still unmarried
None of
women.
my high school or grade school lady teachers were married.
Yeah, and this was a long tradition. And this was a very long tradition in education going back into the 19th century here. Yeah.
The other thing I want to say about
Yeah.
teachers is, with a few exceptions, they were excellent.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, they really knew their subjects, and they were good teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And from that standpoint, it was a pleasure to go to school.
Yeah. And I think in general, anyone who's had the experience going to a Cedar Rapids or Lynn County in general, the school experiences are always excellent. And I think all of us feel very fortunate as we've gotten older that we really did have wonderful opportunity.
Well, that's kind of before the government got involved in education. And the principals and the teachers and that could do what they thought they should be doing. And a lot more reading and writing arithmetic than probably there is today.
And geography and some other
Yeah,
things.
geography.
Didn't have a calculator in your hand trying to learn math.
Yeah.
nowadays. You learn math.
Any courses you remember that you know for sure just aren't taught now? I don't think geography has been a course for a long time, for instance, you know.
It may have a different name now.
Yeah, it's social sciences, whatever, but,
Geography.
We had a health class, too. Do they still teach health?
No.
I don't know.
Well,
Yeah,
we,
Called it gym class. Gym class.
yeah, gym class is your,
They actually had a health teacher.
both the boys and girls both had to go. And I got another story about that. Those old gymnasiums were separated in the middle by a sliding door. The girls were on one side and the boys were on another side. So there was a door in the middle of that thing. And occasionally that door got open.
It was down
Okay?
one end.
Okay? So you'll remember Dick Donahue?
I know
Remember
the
Dick
story you're
Donahue?
gonna tell.
He was over there working across the way. And Paul Kreidler came out. This is how strong this guy was. He came out clear over in the corner of the gym where his office was, picked up a medicine ball, you know, a 16-pound or whatever, threw it on the fly, hit Donahue, and flipped him right through the door. That kind of stopped that kind of activity.
Lucky he didn't kill him.
Oh, that's right.
It only takes one time to stop that kind of behavior, you know, so it's like, yeah.
On the gym is that the girls had you go to the center, and you played just your side.
And then
Couldn't
some.
go back and forth on the.
No, through the door.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was why they had it
No,
divided.
I know that, the door, but I mean, even when we were playing, say, basketball or something,
That's, they didn't cross the line.
we couldn't
Yeah.
cross the line.
But there wasn't any other formal separation of the sexes at Franklin, because, you know, but we know that there was when the building was built strictly as a junior high. Because you look at the Franklin building, and, I mean, carved in the architecture, it has boys' entrance on one side and girls' entrance on the other.
I never paid attention.
Yeah, so apparently, at least in 1923, when the building was new, they obviously
We're separated.
separating the boys from the girls, at least at the junior high level, so,
Were they
yeah.
that way downtown at the old school?
I don't know if they were at the high school level, but I think they were at some of the younger, when the elementaries were, of course, they were all first through eighth, you know, for a long time, you know, before we established the junior high system. Because Cedar Rapids was one of the very first cities, I think one of the very first, if not the first, west of the Mississippi River, that enacted a junior high school program. And they test ran it for a while at the old Jackson and Van Buren schools, east and west. And then it led to the creation of, that's how Franklin School came into being. One of the things I find interesting about the Franklin name itself is that there's a lot of, you go to reference Grant Wood School a little bit over on off Mount Vernon Road. You go into their building and they'll claim that they were the first school in Cedar Rapids ever built that was not named after a president. And of course, I've read that over there, and I'll walk into the staff at Grant Wood School and I'll say, well, I don't know about you, but I've never heard of a President Franklin.
That's right.
And
Named after Benjamin Franklin.
it was named after Benjamin Franklin, but Franklin does hold the distinction. I mean, it was the first time that this city cut the tradition of naming a school after a president. They went in succession for a number of years, and by the time they built the junior highs, they had gotten to a point where they had simply run out of president names. And they considered naming Franklin Harding, but Harding was still president at the time, and they were a little worried with the Teapot Dome. We have a Lincoln building, we do. It's not been used as a Cedar Rapids, it's on the west side. It's actually a building for sale right now if you want it.
Is it the one down?
No. It's been used as a Kirkwood College building for the last 35 years. It's just off 16th Avenue West, just west of 6th Street, about 18th Street.
Oh, I know where it is. It's up in there.
It's up in the hill.
Up on that.
I know where it
Yeah, I know where it is.
Yeah, it's up the hill there on your way up towards the old Cherry Burrell plant on Wilson Avenue. So there was an Abraham Lincoln School built. But it's interesting that Lincoln was never set aside as a potential high school name for Cedar Rapids or junior high. They plugged in Franklin because they ran out of course, the real mystery is why at the last minute, the other proposal for the Franklin name, besides Harding, was Taft. They were going to consider calling it Taft at the time, and for whatever reason, they voted for Franklin instead. So that's just an interesting side note. I didn't know if you wanted, but
No, I didn't know that.
the school did make a little bit of history, and and they were the only school buildings built for a very long period in Cedar Rapids. That Franklin
What
was.
year was Franklin built?
Well, Franklin was built about 1923, and it was pretty much done by 24.
Were all four of them pretty much built in that area?
They were all built within about a three-year period. They built McKinley and Roosevelt a little bit earlier, and then they followed up with Franklin and Wilson. Yeah, and it was one of those things where it was part of a larger school building program. They intended to build new high schools immediately after, but then two things happened. One, well, it wasn't really the war. The Depression was a big factor. But even more than that, the city diverted their fundraising to build the island downtown. They wanted to get the Veterans Memorial City Hall thing done.
Really?
And they thought, well, let's get this done. And then the next project was the high schools. Then the stock market crash happens right after City Hall opens up. And then they had already purchased the Washington site on Forest and Cottage Grove, but they never got a chance to. So then they thought the modifications of buildings like Franklin would be a good
Well,
interim there.
You know, they had a time there, Mark, when the city, the school board had dreams of all these new schools.
Yes.
And they let those 4 high schools go down the tube.
Yeah.
And, which was a big mistake, because those are good buildings.
They're
And-
good, well-built buildings.
And I
Yeah.
think all 4 of those buildings got the same design, I think.
There's a little bit of architectural difference. McKinley and Roosevelt are almost identical, and then Franklin is much closer to Wilson.
Okay.
Is that right?
So there is differences a little bit, but they're all that same general style. And Harrison Elementary is made of the same type of style almost over on the west side, and that was built because of a fire that they had over there. But I think in recent years, Franklin has had an incredible amount of investment put into it.
They all have.
They all have, all 4 of the
Heating
buildings.
and air conditioning,
Yeah.
groundwater program and all that.
Structurally, they're designed to last as long as we want to have them, I think. It's not too long, your Franklin School will be a 100-year-old building, and it still seems to be in a well-suited location for generations to come. I guess to one of my, going into following up the high school experience, tell me about your graduations a little bit. Now, were the January and June graduations held at different locations, or?
Well, I don't know where they were held, but they were separate.
They were separate ceremonies, I know, but do you remember where you graduated? Was it?
Graduated in Franklin.
I know, but did you have the ceremony at the school?
I think we did.
Okay, because I know in later years when the classes got bigger, even the later bigger classes of Franklin High School, they gravitated more towards Kingston Stadium or Veterans Coliseum.
I don't remember ever going anyplace.
I don't
except-
think so.
Yeah, so you guys kind of kept pretty much the home.
Well, Kingston wasn't there.
No, Kingston wouldn't have been there, but there was a period of time there. There was about a 5-year period there where you had Kingston Stadium, and you still had these 4 high schools.
Yeah.
So those classes may have done that.
Well,
Yeah.
high school, those high schools were adequate to have the graduation
Mm-hmm.
in the auditorium.
Yeah, the numbers were balanced out that they could make it work, you know.
You know, big auditoriums.
Right.
They'd have, the assemblies,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Assemblies there.
Yeah, yeah.
Everything.
everything.
Any last memories? Did the teens go downtown quite a bit, or was it just a once a week thing, or did you guys went downtown, or not just for movies, or do you guys go bowling or roller skating or any other kinds
Roller
of?
skating, I remember
I
that.
pretty well stayed in the neighborhood, there was a lot of activity.
A lot of activity in the neighborhood. Where'd you go roller skating? Where was the roller skating place?
It was up,
Oh, Temple.
Temple.
Okay, Temple Roller Rink. Was that about the only indoor rink that was?
the only one that
That's
I-
the old Shrine Temple.
Yeah, that was the old Shrine Temple.
The old dance land. What was that under there?
Oh, they had a bowling alley down there, but I don't know if they had roller
That's
skating.
what it was.
I think it was a bowling.
Yeah, but we're speaking about the old, what had been built as a shrine temple in 27, and then it was converted primarily for use by the National Guard Armory, but then they allowed part of the building to be converted for use.
Out for
The roller rink, yeah, and a lot of
You could
different,
have roller parties up there.
you could have roller parties up there. Did they have a lady play, someone played an organ in there while you were skating, or?
Could have been.
Yeah,
but
could have
I
been.
don't know that.
But I had a
Okay.
birthday party up there one time.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. That was quite a,
Well, I think they had music, because you roller skate to music
yeah, yeah.
of some kind.
I mean, the impression is that they would always have some kind of a organ playing or something like that, you know?
I would say that those roller skating parties were probably about like what you'd have for your birthday or.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, something like that, so, okay.
Mark, you probably already know this, but we also used to bowl at the top of the YMCA building. They had,
I'd heard they had bowling lanes in
they
there.
had 2 for sure, maybe 3, maybe 4.
Okay.
At the top up there.
Okay,
You had to set them, somebody had to set
Set the pins.
okay.
So that you could bowl up there.
Well, I'm glad you just told me that, because I went through the YMCA building before, as they tore it down 8 years ago. We found some abandoned areas of the upper levels that looked like they'd been something interesting like that. We couldn't quite figure it out. Okay, yeah, so we found a lot of hidden places up there. That YMCA, as you remember, was a maze of
Yes, it was.
passageways and rooms, and
Well, I
Yeah.
think they did a lot of add-ons.
they did do a lot of add-ons, yeah, yeah. But, Okay, well, thank you so much. We sure appreciate all the time that you've given to us. I think we've got a really good insight into younger experiences in Cedar Rapids. Oh, sorry, yeah.
About swimming, did you go to Cedar River?
Yeah, do you guys swim in a river?
Marion
No,
Pool.
Marion
Marion
Pool.
Pool.
When did Marion get a pool? Did they always have it? Like since the 20s or something, or?
They must have.
Yeah, it
Okay.
flooded every year, but.
Yeah, well, I remember that.
And the man that managed
Was
that,
that?
Orville Russ, from our
Okay.
football coach, managed the Marion Pool for a long
So,
time.
so even before Ellis Park had a pool,
Marion was.
Marion was,
Country club.
and the country club had a pool,
And that's about it, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
that's it.
unless the occasional private pool. I mean, obviously Bruce Moore had one, but
Yeah.
Yeah, but not too many people had privates.
not too many people had private pools, so.
Today, I don't think there's many private pools in town, is there?
Not really.
They're a bad investment, no matter what. You only use them 3 months a year or whatever.
I guess one last activity I mentioned, now that you mentioned pool,
Yeah.
what about the other kind of pool? Did anybody play billiards or pool or,
I used to play out in Marion.
Marion?
He's a Sharpie.
Where was that? Where was that at, Marion? Do you
Where
remember?
the square is now.
Okay.
As you go in.
Right across the street there.
It was over by Oldie's Haminager or on the other side?
Well, where the square is, on the far side, it was right across the street, wasn't it?
On the east
Yeah.
side.
Okay,
On the east side, it was right across the street.
okay, all right.
It was a nice pool.
Yes, it was.
Okay. Well, that used to be an issue with teenagers in the past, that sometimes people would be playing pool when they shouldn't have been in billiards, and they had to pull them out of the billiard parlor, so I didn't know if that was still
Well,
an
it's what you
issue.
do in the pool, that's what you do in the pool all that counts. If you go in there to play pool,
Well.
nothing wrong with it, you know?
Yeah, but,
The other thing that was, I enjoyed anyhow was pinball machines.
okay.
That was Claxton Pharmacy.
Claxton, but also up there, right next to Times Theater, there was one too. I don't know who it was.
There was a pinball machine in a spot somewhere by Times Theater.
Yeah, there was, as I recall.
Okay.
One day,
It was a big
I don't know
pinball
whether
there.
Jack was with me or who it was, but we brought a drill with us,
Uh-huh.
and we drilled the side of the.
I think I remember that, and we ran a wire in.
We ran a wire.
Ran a wire in.
And the gates up so high that
Holy cow. Oh my gosh. Now, when we're talking about Claxton, you're talking about Claxton when they were on the west side or still on the east
No,
side?
Claxton was up on First Avenue.
That's when he was still across from Cole College,
Where the coffee thing is.
where the Brewed Awakenings Coffee House is now. Yeah,
That
'cause
was a
that,
big pinball area.
okay, that was a big pinball area. Okay, that's interesting to know. So maybe I'll call it to the coffee shop and they can get a pinball machine in there for you or
Have to get
something.
one with steel sides so they can't.
Okay.
Can't drill a hole in it, run
Okay.
we only did that once.
Is that right?
How many of you guys had bikes when you were growing up?
Oh, yeah.
Everyone had a bike in town, so, okay, good.
We had bikes.
You rode it all over town pretty much, or?
Not all.
Not really, okay.
We rode it around wherever you were.
Yeah,
And wherever you went. I never rode it to high school.
yeah.
I wrote it to
But the bus service was really good in town, so,
Yeah.
yeah, city
Or the
bus.
streetcar.
Yeah, the streetcars before that, of course, so, yeah. Well, I thank all of you for your comments. I think we're at 2:30 right now, so. Yeah, one more name. Let's get everyone, I'm going to pass the microphone to everybody. and-
I should keep this confidential.
Okay.
Jack Haney.
Okay.
Jim Wasta.
Dick Hansen.
Nita Lubin.
Sure you don't want to?
Now we'll talk about Florida, New York.
Okay, great. Thanks, everyone, for being here today.
Oh, here we're gonna-
And
I've been out to Joe's place. I know
good job.
about it.